Hello there, interwebs. I am the Bechtloff, and this is, of course, my podcast. And I guess the first thing to talk about, thing that's most largely on my mind right now, is Friday morning. I resigned my membership at my church. Um, I didn't want to do this. I didn't enjoy doing this, but I felt I had to. This was the first church I was ever a member at, church I was baptized at. Like I said, didn't want to do it, thought I had to. And those of you who read my blog might have already read this, but I know some people don't read my blog who listen to this, and vice versa. And I think it's worth talking about again anyway. So here is why I felt I had to do this. First, a little background on my church. My church is one of those increasingly typical kind of non-denominational evangelical type churches. Um, when I first started going to church, when I was still a young Christian, barely going to church due to my schedule, and I wasn't quite comfortable in church. I hadn't really been raised around in the church, so it took some getting used to really get into church culture. But first church I started going to was a place called New Song in my area, and it was a nice church, but mostly my schedule kept me from going to regularly. My work schedule. Um, Eventually, New Song planted another church. New Song was one of those churches that believed that when it got to a certain size, it should have parts of it split off. That churches should grow like amoebas, and I like this. I like this design for church growth. I think it's best. I don't know if I can point to any biblical reference for this is how you do it, but I think just logically it works best. I don't think it's very good for a church to be so big that the pastor doesn't know everybody. I don't see how you can really be any kind of shepherd that way. But that was their design. Churches should grow basically like amoebas. My word for it, not theirs, but I think it fits. And they'd planted at two churches, I think, maybe three. But this was one of the churches they planted, and it was closer to me. And my dad was going, and a couple of the people I knew from New Song were going. So I thought, why not? I'll go to this smaller. Maybe it'll be, you know, a little less intimidating, for lack of a better word. I don't want to say intimidating, but when I first started going to church, people were too friendly. I wasn't used to it. It was in some ways it's kind of like a fake friendly. It's that friendly, like you feel like they're being friendly to you because they're supposed to, not because they actually give a damn about you. And this runs through the church too much. Christians are supposed to be friendly. I have to be friendly to this guy, but you don't really want to, and it comes across as fake. It's not necessarily, the best of intentions, but it can come across as fake. And people were way too friendly, and they got to hold hands during the fucking prayer time, and I'm like, I don't know this guy, and one guy hugged me. I'm like, dude, get away from me. Best of intentions. I don't want to crap on people, but it was a bit much for a new Christian to handle, for someone not used to it. But I figured, maybe, if I have to hold hands with somebody in prayer service, it'd be best if it's somebody I actually get a chance to get to know. So I decided to go to a small church, and I took to it like a fish to water for a while. I loved it. I became a member there. I was baptized. I even helped with a lot of the little projects going on at church, Frank. For a while, I did the soundboard, but I wasn't particularly any good at it. So I asked him to put me on the computer, which was you record a sermon, you run like the PowerPoint. There's in the background there's like a little screen with a pastor got some slides going on. You run that for him. That was better. I didn't like doing the soundboard because the worship leader was a little uptight and expected me to do a little bit more than I was able to do. I didn't know anything about a soundboard. I like, here you go, and he wants me to do all kinds of stuff I had no idea how to do. So it's like, I'm not comfortable with this. Moved on. But I'm doing a computer. I'm fitting in nice. I like this church. The people there seem to like me, genuinely like me, not fake Christian because they have to like me. I'm going to a small group Bible study. Everything's fine. Well, some time goes by, And I find myself not wanting to go all that much anymore. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. You know, I felt disconnected from the church. I really thought the problem was me, and to some extent maybe it is. I'm not claiming to be perfect. But I really thought, man, something must be wrong with me. I feel less and less of a connection to this church as a whole. Still had really close friends in the church. But I didn't want to go to the small group anymore. I didn't even want to go to church services anymore. I finally had to put my name off the computer thing, and I told myself it was due to my schedule. I was very busy. I was working 6 days a week, and I was tired Sunday. All I wanted to do Sunday was sleep in, and that was part of it. That was definitely part of it. I did indeed want to sleep in Sunday. I was indeed tired Sunday, but really another part of it was I just didn't want to go. There was something wrong in the church. Something was wrong, and I couldn't quite even put my finger on it. Well, in this time, that maybe even a little bit before, New Song had been swallowed up by a group called Harvest Bible, which is run by James MacDonald, which, if you are a Christian, you might have heard of him. He is really big shit in the Christian community right now. He's got a radio show called Walking the Word. Harvest is big and getting bigger all the time. And he gets, he fills up stadiums or I'm sorry, auditoriums when he has a speaking thing. He's reasonably big shit right now. And our church was cozying up to him. And there was a lot of people or not our church yet, but New Song had basically become Harvest Lancaster. They were assimilated into this board collective, which I don't like that Harvest does it. Yeah, they quote unquote plant churches, though more often than not they assimilate existing churches. But it's not so much plant a new church as it is just extend a tentacle out, because there's very strict control over what goes on in that quote unquote new church. So New Song became Harvest Lancaster. And a lot of people were upset about this at New Song. I was hearing a lot of elders even left. A lot of people were having none of it. And my personal opinion of MacDonald was, I can't say I really liked him, but I can't say I really disliked him either. I think he tends to fall into a bit too much legalism at times, which would lead to me to my bigger problem with him that I discover later. But a bit too much legalism at times. He's not that bright. I mean, he's a good speaker, I guess, if you like his presentation, but he doesn't strike me as being very intellectually challenging. I mean, he's certainly no C.S. Lewis. To modern people, he's not even like a Ravi Zacharias or anything. He's not very intellectually challenging. So I can't say I disliked him, but I was never a big fan of him. And I thought a lot of the fawning over him that many at New Song and in our church even did was silly. But again, I also thought it was kind of silly at the time that people would react so violently against him, like, "Oh, this is crap. I want no part of it." So New Song is now assimilated into the Harvest Collective, and so we don't officially have ties to New Song anymore. I mean, we do in the sense that there were many personal ties to New Song, but officially our organization didn't have any ties to them. Well, our church started to cozy up to Harvest as well. And we couldn't become an official quote-unquote Harvest church because we were too physically close to New Song. We weren't, I think we had to be like 30 miles away, and we weren't, something like that. But we kind of became like Harvest affiliated. It's really complicated and silly, but we started cozying up to Harvest more and more in this time. And I didn't really think about it at the time, but the more and more my church felt different and I felt uncomfortable with it was the more it started cozying up to Harvest. We started getting like Harvest, like all our study guides were from there now, and we'd be planning big trips to go see James MacDonald speak and all this crap. And I didn't really have a connection in my head, but something about the church wasn't connecting with me anymore. Something about it was I wasn't feeling a connection anymore. Well, finally, oh man, I finally just kind of stopped going. Like, I realized at one point I hadn't been in several months, like at all. Not to small group, not to church. I thought, this ain't right, man. I gotta go to church. I gotta go to church. Forsake not the assembly of believers and all that good stuff. So I thought, all right, well, one of the best ways that'll make sure I start going to church more is I'll get back on the computer schedule. I mean, it's easier to get out of bed when you have to be somewhere as opposed to you should be somewhere. You know what I mean? So I thought, okay, that'll be good. I'll email the worship leader, tell him to put me back on the schedule. So I emailed him. I said, look, I know I haven't been around much, and I didn't even really know why I stopped going to church. So I just said, like, look, I've been kind of sorting some stuff through in myself and my life, but I need to start going back to church. It's like, okay. So I emailed him that, and I said, put me back on the computer schedule. He emails me, and he's like, well, the pastor and I need to talk to you. I thought, oh man, they're just going to grill me about why I wasn't going to church, and I don't even really know. I don't have anything to say. I was like, look, I appreciate your concern, but I don't really have much to talk about. Well, but they were insistent. He said, your brothers in Christ, and one of whom is an elder, and your pastor charged with the protection of your soul, wish to speak with you. And I'm like, oh shit, we're pulling rank now, aren't we? Well then, Jacob Marley, if it's my soul we speak of, let's be on with it. So I thought, all right, I'm getting called into the principal's office over something here. I guess I gotta go. I'm like, fine, let's do this. So I meet with him, and wow, first of all, it wasn't even really that I wasn't going to church. They wanted to grill me over. But that was ancillary to them. They wanted to grill me over some of the things I'd written on my blog about churchianity and whatnot that they disagreed with, and the language on my blog. There's some harsh language on my blog. Anybody who knows me knows I swear too much, and there was too much of it on my blog early on. There's not as much on my blog now because my writing's improved. I don't need it as a crutch quite as much as I used to. But even now, I don't shy away from swearing on my blog. I just don't use it as a crutch. I try not to, at least. But my blog still has a bit of a locker room talk feel because that's how I want to, real talk. I don't want to dance around shit. So they grill me on the language on my blog and some of the things I had written on my blog and some of the things I had posted on my private Facebook. One of which was our church does a Halloween outreach. And we don't call it Halloween. We call it something gay like Fall Fest or something like that. Bright light, dark night, something like that. We won't call it Halloween. And I posted on Facebook right after I'd helped out with this. Because I love Halloween. Halloween's one of my favorite holidays. Halloween's fun on the bun. And I was so happy with the church when I first joined it that we did the Halloween outreach. That we opened up our doors and we handed out candy to the trick-or-treaters. I was so happy with that, man. I loved it. I loved that we weren't like, Halloween is evil, or shut our lights off, fuck you. Like, I was so glad we weren't like that. But it did bug me that we wouldn't call it Halloween. It seemed silly to me to be handing out candy to trick-or-treaters and not say Halloween. It also seemed silly to me because, let's face facts, these are some of the same people who would get really, really mad if you say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. But they won't say Happy Halloween. That seems hypocritical to me. I think non-believers view that as hypocritical. I think they take notice of that. And I made a point of that. In a Facebook post where I basically, the point of the post was more to praise my church for having this Halloween outreach. Well, that's apparently no good. I'm apparently not supposed to criticize my church at all. Unless I bring it privately to the pastor. Which is ridiculous to me. Alright? I don't think an organization is healthy if they can't understand loyal opposition. If they can't understand that, hey, you know what? This isn't some major thing that I'm going to break fellowship over with you or try and be disruptive. But I think it's silly. I'm going to voice that I think it's silly. But it's not up to me. The leadership can do what they want on this. They're accountable to God. I voice my opinion. And take it or leave it. You don't agree with it? Then don't go with my way. I'm not going to hide my opinion, but I'm not going to be a jerk. It's not like I was there at the Halloween thing disrupting it over this. No. I was helping out. So yeah, I think an organization is unhealthy if they can't recognize loyal opposition. They can't recognize that people have dissenting views within their ranks, but they're still loyal, you know. So he's grilling me on this, and one other thing he grilled me on was I posted something on my Facebook one time when I had some article, and I don't even remember what it was, something about churchianity, and I joked on my Facebook. I was like, man, it's articles like this that make it glad most people in my church don't read my blog. And I meant that tongue-in-cheek, jokey kind of thing. I guess I could see how you could take it as passive-aggressive and douchey. They certainly did. And I said, look, I didn't really mean it that way. I certainly don't think I meant it that way, but I'm sorry if it was taken that way. You know, fair enough on that one. Those two things on my Facebook, they were grilling me over, as well as things on my blog. And it was getting a little ugly. And I finally said, look, I have differing views from you guys on a number of things, but it's nothing major. It's nothing I break fellowship with. It's just, these are my views, and I'm not going to hide them, but I don't necessarily want to fight with you about them either. Well, you need to decide if you're with us or against us. And the pastor literally said this to me. You're either with us or against us. And over what? It's not like I'm sitting here denying the deity of Christ or any sort of huge theological issues that we should break fellowship with. No, I was saying that maybe we should say Happy Halloween when we're having a Halloween party. Because maybe to do otherwise is just kind of silly and stupid. You know? And you're either with us or against us. That's not something a pastor says to you. That's something a dictator says. That's something a supervillain says, all right? It's not something a pastor says to you, particularly over shit this minor. But I thought to myself, no, he didn't mean it that way. And I finally was like, look, I gotta go, you know, agree to disagree, whatever, you know. I gotta go. You know, good talking to you guys. Good talking, coach, but I gotta go. And I didn't want to face what had just been said to me. What basically, the hand had been tipped to me as to what was wrong with the church. What was wrong in my church, and I didn't want to face it. I freely admit, I was like, nah, he didn't mean it the way it sounded. Nah. Well, around this time, behind closed doors, talks were happening with the church leadership about more formalizing ties with Harvest. Sorry. Need a drink there. And a decision was made, apparently, that Oak Hill is going to be a Harvest affiliate church, or however they word it exactly. Oak Hill's Harvest now, basically. Two of the elders were none too happy about this. They thought it was BS. And they flat out left. There was an elder civil war that broke out over this nonsense. And they flat out left. And I'm still not even going to church. I kept thinking, like, I guess I wasn't keeping my word, but, I said, hey, I'm going to start going to church again during this meeting with my pastor. And I did for, 2 weeks, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And I just couldn't get myself out of bed. It was like, I'll just miss this next one, and I'll go next week. I'll go next week. No, next week was never coming. I just wasn't going anymore. Nothing about this church was going to get me out of bed on a Sunday morning when I was dog-ass tired. It just wasn't. So time goes on a little bit, and I start going to another small group with led by someone who's very close to me, who has become practically family to me. I don't even really have to knock when I come over to his house, and he doesn't when he comes over here. So we're very close. I'm very close to his family. He's very close to me, to my father. We're we're very close. So I started going to the small group he was leading, and it was great. I was finally getting connection to other believers again. All the problems that were in the church at large didn't seem to be in this small group, and it was so wonderful. Unfortunately, small groups only every other week, so I wasn't getting spiritually fed as much as I wanted to. But, I had my own private Bible studies, and I listened to sermons on the radio and whatnot. I mean, I hadn't walked away from the faith. I just walked away from my church. So, elders Civil War. Elders have left, you know. And by the way, turnover at this church is through the freaking roof. You know, we're getting new members all the time, but they're not staying for longer than a month, 9 times out of 10. You know, our numbers aren't really growing. People are like, there'd be people I would meet during the handful of times I would actually go to church or at small group or like at a church picnic or something. And they'd be gone now. And they still live in the town. And I'd see them sometimes. I'd be like, hey, you're not going to New Song anymore? No, we don't really want to go there anymore. And most of them couldn't really put their finger on why either. But there was definitely something sick in the church. Like, I think that's the best word. And I don't mean like sick. Like, you're fucking sick, man. But like, just us. You know when you get like a minor cough? Or when you get like a little cold, you're sick, but it's not something huge, but it just drains you, you know? It's seemingly minor, but it has major effects on you. You know, it's not necessarily going to kill you, but you're off, you know? There was a virus in this church. A spiritual virus was in this church, and I couldn't put my finger on it for the longest time. So now we're harvest officially. And then, and I mentioned this a couple of podcasts ago, then my pastor up and announces that he's thinking of moving to Malaysia. Apparently there's a Harvest Church in Malaysia, and he's going to go be the pastor there. And our poor ass little church actually paid to send him there. I don't know why Harvest didn't pay to send him there. Harvest is good at demanding some funds, but not necessarily giving them back. Our broke ass little church paid to send him there for like a month. And then he comes back and decides this is what he wants to do. Supposedly God's calling him to this. Now, I said this in my last podcast, and I'm going to say it. Or not last, 2 podcasts ago, I think. I'm going to say it again. I don't believe God's calling him there at all. This is a small, new church that he helped found. It's in turmoil. His responsibility is there. Is at Oak Hill. Also, I don't think a Malaysian church needs a white Western pastor. I believe a Malaysian church needs a Malaysian pastor. It needs someone who speaks their language. And I'm not saying some racist shit. I'm just saying people are different. Different people are different. Alright? And a Malaysian church is probably best served by a Malaysian pastor. Someone who speaks their language both culturally and literally. So if you were going to go over there to train their pastor, that would make perfect sense. Him going over there to be their pastor, not so much. 9 times out of 10. I know there's exceptions to the rules, and I know sometimes God will call you to the other end of the world, but that doesn't happen nearly as much as we like to think it does. Most of the time, the mission field God has given you is what's in front of you. So he's going to drag his wife and his family, who, through the grapevine, I'm finding is not happy about it, particularly kids, and I can't say I blame them. These kids are sacrificing the most here, because they're giving up their childhood to go live in this 3rd/2nd world hellhole. And now I know my pastor had spent time as a young kid with his parents were missionaries, so he's not completely unfamiliar with it. But still, he doesn't have anything to offer them really. You know, he doesn't have any technical skills that they don't. Like, he's not going to show them how to build wells. He's not a doctor. No, he's just a guy who speaks really well. And yeah, that's kind of lost in the translation. But Harvest kind of talked him into this because it's a Harvest church, and I think it smacks more of a midlife crisis than anything else. But yeah, he's leaving us. He's decided, I'm up and leaving. In the midst of all this turmoil. You know, elder civil war, turnover rates through the roof, all this stuff. And he's, see you, bye. Also, he literally, like, look in my hand right now, I got in the mail, and he sent this out to all of us. This little pamphlet. It looks all glossy and sterile and soulless. And it's the kind of pamphlet you get from a major organization, like a major parachurch ministry. And it's all like, you know, we're moving I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to name names. I mean, I suppose if you could be internet detective, you could figure this out because I've named the churches. But the Smiths are moving to Malaysia, and here's why. And he's given all this bullshit here, and it's just shilling, and it's like, hey, and give us money to help us do it. It's asking for like $13,000 in total they need to raise from our broke ass little church. No, it ain't happening. And he's basically wanting $13,000 to quit. I don't think if I went up to my boss and told him to pound sand, he'd be quite so generous if I said, "Now can I have $13,000 to help me go out the door?" But anyways, he's up and leaving, and we vote on a new pastor, and it's somebody within the church who I don't. It's our worship leader, and I don't believe he's qualified. Nothing against the guy. He's kind of young. He's kind of arrogant. I mean, he could probably be a good preacher at one point in his life. I don't believe he is now. And certainly with the church in the sorry state it is, I think he's completely in over his head. So all this, at this point, I'm like, I can't ignore how badly deteriorated this church is anymore. So I call up, or I email this my small group leader, who I'm very close to him. I said, "Look, I'm just giving you a heads up. I think I need to leave this church. I still want to go to their small group because I love you guys, but I think I need to resign my church membership." And he talked to me about it, and he kind of sensed some of the same things I sensed. I don't want to say he agreed with me 100% on things, but he definitely sensed that I wasn't crazy. There's definitely some things wrong here. And he said, you go where God is calling you. This doesn't change anything between us. We're still bros, And I'm talking to other people in the church too about it. I'm trying to get answers. I'm trying to figure out what exactly is even wrong, because I can't quite put my finger on what the complete problem is. What has caused this change? At this point, I figure it has to be harvest. I mean, I know causation isn't always, or correlation isn't always causation, but a lot of times it is. And if it's the only evidence you have to look at, you better take a good look at it. But I'm asking around, and I'm like, what is called? And I'm asking I'm asking people that have left primarily, but I'm asking people in the church. In the church, everybody either wants to act like they don't see it, or maybe they don't see it, or they kind of can see it, but they don't want to talk about it because we don't want to be gossiping and stuff like that. I finally talk to some people who had left, and I'm not going to repeat what was said to me, because A, it was said in confidence, and B, I can't confirm what was said to me. Obviously, these are secondhand accounts, but if what has been said to me is true, things were much worse behind closed doors. There was a lot more vicious fighting, and I had heard some accusations from people I talked to that there were things going on that were unethical, if not illegal. And again, I'm not going to repeat them. I say all this to say that apparently those behind closed doors were telling me that things were even worse than I imagined. And it all comes back to harvest. It all starts at harvest, and it all amps up the closer we get to harvest. So I'm thinking to myself, what is it about harvest that could possibly be doing this? Yeah, it's not particularly good stuff, but I never thought it was that bad. I'd gotten some value from listening to Walk in the Word before. You got to kind of maybe pick the crap out of it and all, but that's any human being. Human beings are fallen, fallible creatures. You're always gonna have to not take what comes out of a man's mouth as gospel. So I thought to myself, all right, well, I had to give Harvest a bit more of a listen to. So I listened to some of the past things on the site, and I started listening to them at work when I had a chance. Sometimes at my work, I'm able to listen to the radio, depending on what I'm doing at that point in the day. So in my area, Walk in the Word comes on at 10:30, and if I was somewhere I could listen to radio at 10:30, I listened to them. And a sermon from last week, or a week or two ago, I guess it was. What was the date? I'd written it down. It was like July or June 26th, I want to say. Yeah, June 26th. Replacing a Rebellious Attitude, Part 3. And he's talking about the story of, like, in the desert, when Moses is leading the Israelites through the desert, Korah and a little bit of his posse, a couple of his buddies, were all like, we should be in charge, fuck you, Moses. I'm obviously paraphrasing, I don't believe that's what they actually said. It's certainly not in the scripture like that, but they were basically like, we should be Moses, screw Moses. And they wanted to usurp Moses' power. And Moses' response, mind you, is not, well, you're either with me or against me. Moses' response is actually really taking to heart their criticism. He doesn't get defensive until they start criticizing his buddy Aaron. He's like, whoa, 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 I can understand you have a problem with me, but Aaron's a good guy. I've always taken that story as the primary lesson there is do not try to usurp power. James MacDonald, however, was interpreting that story as you better not criticize your leaders ever. And as I'm listening to James, I mean, you could look up this sermon. Maybe I'm wrong, but as I'm listening to it, I realized something. I realized there was a very authoritarian streak running through James' teachings. And once you see a pattern, you can kind of look back, and you can see the pattern looking back, even if you hadn't seen it then. And I realized so many of the things he said, there was just this authoritarian streak. There was a you better fall the hell in line streak with James MacDonald. And I realized that's exactly what had infected my church. You're either with us or against us. And again, you see a pattern, and it's like, holy crap. You can't unsee it now. When you see the penis in the castle in the Little Mermaid old VHS cover box, you can't unsee it. It'll be like the first thing you see every time you look at it now. You can't unsee it. It made sense with all these things I had heard, all these it completely gelled together. I thought that's what the problem is. That is what has infected this church. There is something when Harvest came in to New Song and to Oak Hill, it brought in something dark, something authoritarian, and I couldn't even put my finger on it at first. It was like an air pressure change in the air. You don't exactly know what you're feeling, but you felt something. You felt something change, and something changed for the worst. And I realized I had to leave. I'm not a mature enough Christian or even a patient enough man to deal with what was going on around me. And more to the point, I'm a bit of a combative man. Obviously. That's why I do this. That's why I do my blog. And I don't want to be that way at church. I don't want to have to sit in the pews with my guard up at church. I don't want to be that way at church. And I'm like, this isn't for me anymore. I have to leave. And it broke my heart to no end. I didn't want to do it. I take no pleasure in it. I mean, I don't want to name names because despite the differences I've had with some of these guys, despite how disappointed I am, I loved these guys. I still do. And it breaks my heart to no end. But I had to move on. I haven't officially joined another church yet. But I'll probably end up going to the one that many of the ex-New Song members fled to. I'm still going to go to my small group. But no, this isn't for me. And maybe, there's new leadership now. Almost all the elders are gone, the old elders. A new pastor. Maybe they'll turn it around. I certainly hope so. I would never be happier to be proven wrong. I don't want to stand over the ruins of this church and say, ha ha ha, told you. I don't want to do that. I would never be happier to be proven wrong than if New Song once again, Oak Hill, or New Song's gone. No. But if Oak Hill rised from the ashes like a phoenix, if Oak Hill once again became a great spirit-filled church, nothing would make me happier. But yeah, this is and you can sit here and you can say, oh, you're just seeing things, or you're just reading too much into things, or you're just a disgruntled ex-member and you probably just had a fight with somebody there. And for all you know, maybe that's true. But I'm warning you right now. I'm sure a lot of my listeners, a lot of my readers, you're religious people. If you belong to any kind of non-denominational evangelical church, and there's certainly a lot of them out there, don't be surprised if Harvest comes a knocking at your door. And don't let him in. I implore you, don't let him in. You know, the vampire has to be invited in, and don't invite him in, because he'll suck you dry. When New Song and Oak Hill threw their lot in with Harvest, they brought something very dark, something very wrong, and something authoritarian into their mix. And it killed New Song, and it's killed Oak Hill. I take no pleasure in telling you this. Simply, the only reason I'm doing both a podcast and the blog post on it is because A, it reaches a slightly wider audience that way, and B, there's really not much else I could talk about on this podcast because it's what's completely on my mind. So I have to talk about it. I have to get it off my chest. But don't let them in. I'm warning you right now. There's poison in the punch bowl when it comes to Harvest. There's poison in the punch bowl when it comes to James McDonald. Don't let them in. And I know they'll seem harmless at first. They seem harmless to me. I wasn't in on the fuck James McDonald bandwagon immediately. But looking back, all those guys that were on it, they were right. They were absolutely right. So just don't let them in. I can't stress it enough. Do not let them in. Alright, well, I don't want to... I try to end a lot of these podcasts on more positive notes, maybe like a recommendation or just... And I certainly want to end this one on a more positive note. I think a nice bright sorbet to cleanse the palate is exactly what's needed here. So I'm going to talk about my new Wii U. If you listen to this podcast, you know I got it. You know I had issues with some of the connectivity demands on it, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. I'm going to talk about the games I got on it, because they're, for the most part, really good. I got Mario Kart 8, and Mario Kart 8 is just fantastic. It's just awesome. It really is. The anti-gravity mechanic on it is just great. The graphics are obviously a step up from the previous console's Mario Kart. It's just great. There are some flaws to it. There are some silly flaws that I can't believe got passed. Like, just little things mostly. Like, at the end of a race, you know, you get the option to watch the highlight reel or go to the next race. Well, highlight reel's at the top instead of next race at the top, but you always accidentally hit it. But minor things like that, I can't... It's still, if you have a Wii U and you don't have Mario Kart 8, you're doing it wrong. Mario Kart 8 is just fantastic. I got new Super Mario Brothers Wii U as well as new Super Luigi U. And they're essentially the same game. Mario Wii U, it's just Super Mario Wii. It's our new Super Mario Wii. Expand it a little bit. It's just this. It's good. It's if you like Super Mario Wii, you're gonna like Super Mario Wii U. It's that simple. The Luigi one, it only costs like $25 or something like that, and it's weird. It's basically DLC that they put on a disc, which I'm glad because I always like to have a physical copy. But there's just a lot of there's a lot about it I don't like. First of all, for the year of Luigi, we couldn't give him a real game. We had to give him basically just DLC on an existing game. You know, I mean, you know, Luigi's Mansion was a real game, a separate game. Hell, Mario is missing, which was the first real Luigi game. While it was a piece of shit, it was at least its own game. I also don't like that every level's like a little short level and it's like a speed run. Like they only give you 100 seconds. I don't really like it. I gotta say, I don't like it. I'm probably gonna sell it. I can see why some people would like it. I'm not gonna say it's quote unquote bad. It just doesn't appeal to me. And the other game I got, obviously on a Mario kick, because hey, that's one of the biggest reasons you get a Nintendo, is I will be getting other non-Mario games. The Mario ones were the first ones I wanted. Super Mario 3D World. This is great. You can play as Toad and Peach, which I really like, and they've got the same kind of. They've got the same powers as like in the American version, the American Super Mario 2, where like Peach can kind of float a little bit. Toad's sort of the fastest. Luigi jumps high, and Mario's kind of the all-around middle ground guy. There's new power-ups in it, obviously. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I don't like the cat suit. The powers for the cat suit are fine. That's the animal thing. You always get an animal thing in a Mario game, you know? Usually it's some sort of flight thing. Kind of flight, glide, whatever. But you always get an animal thing. A penguin, a raccoon, a bee, whatever. But, you know, everybody makes a joke that Mario's a furry. Because all these animal suits. Well, the cat suit looks like Mario's. More than any other suit, looks like Mario should be going to a furry convention. It's ridiculous. Other than that, though, I mean, I haven't beat any of them yet. I just got them. But they're damn fine games. Damn fine games. Again, even Luigi, which is the one I dislike the most, I could see why people like it, would like it. It's not a bad game, or really it's just DLC on a disc. But it's not bad. It just wasn't for me. There's a lot of games I want to get on it. I want to get Hyrule Warriors. I'm excited about Captain Toad, Yoshi's Woolly World, new Kirby game coming out. I actually ordered the Kirby collection for the Wii, because none of the stores in my area seem to have it. It's just like, screw it, I'll order it. But yeah, the Wii U, I'm very happy with. Some of the issues I had with it notwithstanding. I might get a PS4 down the line. I know I'm not getting an Xbox One. Xbox One can suck it. I might get a PS4 down the line, but Wii U is the... I actually think Nintendo might dominate this generation. I think they've got the most energy behind them right now. After E3, I really think they could take the... If they can just get some third-party support, they'll definitely spank everybody else. But that's my attempt to end this podcast on a positive note. Super Mario 3D World. I recommend it for any Mario fan. Mario Kart, I definitely recommend it. New Super Mario Bros. U, I recommend it, though not as much. Luigi, I don't recommend it. But, yeah, you might get a kick out of it. But, I don't recommend it. So, that's my podcast. Here I am, signing off. Everybody have a good week.